Not many NA CSGO fans are loving what's happening right now, though, to their scene, as it appears that pretty much the NA CSGO landscape,
Dunzo.
Jacob, is pretty much... Yeah,
Dunzo.
you got any gum? You got any gum? So Valorant comes in, blaze of fire, NA invests at high rates, Jacob, and then all of a sudden, the best of the best in NA CSGO either look elsewhere or join the Valorant train. So what is the future, if any, of what will happen with the tactical FPS scene? Bring Valorant and CSGO into the conversation. Predict the future for us on what will happen. Will anything change? Will it only get worse for NA CSGO? Will teams like Tarek's tweet, will people just look to Europe and just ship on over there? What's going to happen?
I think it'll get worse if COVID-19 doesn't get resolved in the first 2 quarters of 2021. Counter-Strike is in a very unique position. To your point, what you just said about Tarek, that is what's happening. We just saw Furia get announced that they were going to be competing in ESL Pro League, but that requires those Brazilian players who have for the past few years lived in North America to fly and live in Europe till the end of that league. I actually just saw that Flashpoint announced their teams, and the broadcast is hosted by Monty and Thorin in London, right? Like, then they're an LA-based company, right? Like, it's because Counter-Strike has become predominantly, if you want to have a competition that's more interesting than just Evil Geniuses and Team Liquid and Gen.G winning everything, then you have to go outside of North America. North American Counter-Strike's been really stale all year because of COVID-19, and it's sort of putting up this like region lock that shouldn't exist. That's part of what's made Counter-Strike so good over the past, what is it, close to 8 years now, 7 years since Global Offensive came out. What's made it so good the past 7 years is the fact that everybody can play everyone, and that it happens on a fairly regular basis, at least once a month, sometimes even more than that. And you had the best teams getting together for these majors twice a year. Well, those majors don't exist this year because of COVID-19, and the best teams are European historically, and the best teams in North America, the Evil Geniuses and Team Liquids of the world, weren't getting the opportunity to practice against these people, which is why you see players like Nitro and Daps and Som moving out of Counter-Strike and going into Valorant. That is like, they are burnt out. Like, Nitro told me very directly that he was burned out by what the past 6 months of his life had looked like before he decided to move to Valorant. And because it's boring. Like, it is boring. It's boring to watch as a fan because these teams aren't playing very good Counter-Strike in North America. They're, like I said, it's incredibly top heavy among two to four teams. The best Counter-Strikes in Europe, and now you have organizations like 100 Thieves who have expiring contracts with their Counter-Strike team, but have made a huge investment in Valorant, in the Hiko Steel Nitro squad, and are essentially faced with the decision of, do we want to continue to fund this team that cost us a lot of money, the ex-Renegades Australian team that's been living in North America the past few years? Do we want to continue to fund them only for them to play against mediocre teams and no one to really care about the events because they're so repetitive in North America? Or do we want to invest in this game that's totally new, that has a much more thorough and built out North American scene, that there are new players, that there are new interesting storylines? Like, yeah, if you're looking at it from like that perspective, like, you have to choose where you want to allocate your budget, Valorant makes a lot more sense right now. I don't think that Valorant is responsible for killing NA CSGO. I think that what's happening with the cheating and match fixing scandals that are happening with all, like, there were some odd 30 plus coaches that got suspended for a minimum of 6 months, even, and some even up to like 2.5 years by the ESIC for using this like known cheating bug or spectator bug that's existed in the game for a while to be able to like cheat and help their teams win in online matches over the past few years, and even in the past 8 months since the pandemic broke out. Yeah, that's awful. I think that there are players who, like I said earlier, some who have transitioned to Valorant, some who have stayed in Counter-Strike, who did cheat and match fixed in lower levels of Counter-Strike, like the Mountain Dew League. That will probably come out soon enough. Like, it's known that there's an investigation going on by the ESIC. And I think that all of these things kind of brought together are making it where you have organizations go, why are we even bothering trying to have a good NACSGO team? Because we're already investing millions of dollars in salaries. Well, why don't and then we're going to have to pay even more money to go send them to Europe and get them visas to be able to live there and set up housing in countries we don't have infrastructure in. Like that's an even huger, like more big spend. Whereas you could just go, oh well, let's just invest in Valorant. Like let's just allocate that money to Valorant. It can use domestically. We already have infrastructure in North America. When all this ends, we can move them out to our facility in Los Angeles or wherever you're based, right? Like it's way easier. And I think that a lot of organizations I've talked to view it as a better use of their money right now.
Mm-hmm. That's North America, though, right?
Yeah, no, Europe's totally different. Like because European Counter-Strike is still it's being rocked a little bit by some of this stuff too, like particularly the match fixing and cheating scandals. But like the top European teams are still really entertaining to watch. They can still play with one another. ESL Pro League still exists. Flashpoint will exist as well. Like there will be leagues that are based in Europe for Counter-Strike. But there has been a really giant wall put up in the Atlantic Ocean because of COVID-19 that prevents Counter-Strike from being what it used to be a year ago.
I want to speak from so Jacob's the hardcore CS:GO reporter fan. I'm more of a casual CS:GO fan. I really love watching CS:GO, but I'm a guy who I'll watch all the major, I'll watch all the matches of major, but I'll watch the finals of A tier tournaments, B tier tournaments. I'll come in if there's no big League of Legends or Valorant match on a weekend, and I'll watch the CS:GO tournament. Right now, it feels, and Jacob, you can kind of talk about this, it feels like every tournament's the same. Every single tournament, it feels like one tournament ends and the next one begins in Europe, and it's the same format, same teams, similar prize pool, similar format, and it just seems like it keeps on going and going and going. I looked on the CS:GO Reddit, and this was one of the biggest issues. I think this was like a top thread on the CS:GO Reddit, is that everything feels like it's Groundhog Day, where it feels like every tournament ends and then it begins, and the end of the 2020 calendar is packed. There seems to be a tournament every single weekend to the end of the year because it's all these European organizers trying to get in that that CS:GO juice that they missed out on for the first majority of the year due to COVID. And I think the biggest reason right now that all these teams are investing in Valorant, especially in North America, is that they believe and they trust Riot more than they trust Valve, because there is a chance if COVID doesn't let up, there's no way that Valve's going to do what Riot did this year with Worlds, where they're going to make a bubble for CS:GO teams to participate in a 20-team CS:GO Worlds or major bubble. Valve is hands off, and that's there's good and bad to being hands off. But if you are right now in COVID and you have to make very cut and dry decisions, you can't just invest in everything. You have to pick and choose your spots. If you're if you're 100 Thieves, you're going to invest in Valorant because you can trust in Riot to continue pushing on the Valorant esports narrative. Where look at Dota right now. Dota's literally just see ya next time. We have $40 million for the prize pool, but we're gonna have a tournament someday. We don't know when. We don't know how. We don't really know what we're gonna do next. But peace out, guys. We'll see you soon. Thanks for the cash. Like, that's Valve. They're very hands-off. They do great work. Their games are amazing. It's Dota and Counter-Strike have been one of the greatest esports of all time. They've been two of the big three with League of Legends. But as COVID has shown us, there is no big three. It is a big one. It's League of Legends and a giant gap in everyone else. And I think these these not only tournament organizers, but these teams, 100 Thieves, these big name orgs see this and say, where are we going to invest our money? Are we going to invest our money with Valve, where we have no clue what they're going to do, how much they really are interested in the esports scene? Are they fine just not having, a major for the next 2 years if it doesn't happen? Are they fine just holding on to this $40 million of Battle Pass money for the international whenever they can do it in Sweden? Like, they're going to invest in Riot because they know that Riot's going to continue trudging forward no matter how hard it is.
I think one thing I just want to
okay, real quick.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to say on the revenue side of things, to Tyler's point, like look at stickers. Like I can't
Yeah.
emphasize how important stickers are in
Yep.
Counter-Strike economics, right? If you're one of the best teams in Counter-Strike, you qualify for a major for the the twice a year, right? And you get a gun sticker unique to that event, and you are a popular team, that makes a ton of money, and that is a huge revenue driver for these teams to be able to get a revenue share of that from Valve for using, whatever their logo is, Team Liquid logo, Fnatic logo, whatever else it may be, right? And as far as I understand, some of those teams in ESL, Pro League, and Flashpoint, and some of these other leagues have gone like, well, since we don't have the majors, can we like get stickers for EPL? Can we get stickers for Flashpoint? Like, can we like try to create that revenue stream for ongoing events? Valve's just like, no, like it's not a major, and so like these teams are like, okay, well, there goes our couple $1 million that would try to pad our pockets a little bit to make sure that like the millions we're investing every year kind of get made back. Like almost every Counter-Strike team runs in the negative. None of them make money. Like that's already a problem. And then you take away additional revenue, and you're just like, all right, I guess like what do we have to work with here? Nothing. So to me, like, yeah, I think to Tyler's point, there is a lot more trust because like Valve has not really done anything. Even Activision Blizzard's done more than Valve to try to alleviate the pandemic, which is saying a lot, right? Like the
Sure is.
They try.
Emma, last point on this.
I was just gonna say, and Artie, you're gonna get mad because I'm gonna kind of do your job for you here.
That's okay.
Again, an interesting transition from this discussion is actually going into First Strike and looking at how Riot has kind of set up the competitive season this year. Because one of the things I'm the most curious about regarding how Valorant Esports develops is how Riot is going to balance presumably having, and when we talk about First Strike, it is supposed to effectively be in a non-COVID world, we can imagine this would be their season 1 championship, right? Kind of comparable to the first year of League of Legends where they had it at DreamHack. And we've seen, despite the fact that a lot of these tournaments have been third party, it's also third party / Riot, and First Strike combines the two with how you're looking at who is running qualifiers versus Riot running, I believe, the final 8, right? Like the actual First Strike competition for various regions, at least for NA, it's like final 8. Because the NA details have come out. I don't know if any other regions have. I've just been going off of that. So I think it's particularly interesting to see how they've balanced Valorant and League of Legends with the Shanghai bubble for Worlds. And additionally, we've just been talking about it, how this has been like a really weird lull period for Valorant prior to going into this First Strike tournament, which, by the way, is going to have a major patch change / update between the first qualifier and the second qualifier, at least based on the NA schedule, because the first qualifier, we're not going to have Sky or Icebox, but the second qualifier, I believe we will. So I'm like very, very curious, because Riot has always made it abundantly clear that Worlds is their thing. That's their big event. They want that above everything else. And presumably they'd want to do something similar to the Valorant competitive scene, where they have a Worlds tournament. It's weird, the timing of this, though, because if they're going to be basing this off of years to come, and I'm not saying I don't trust Riot, I definitely think that they are obviously putting a lot more effort into this than Valve, who is like historically hands off. And there are positives and negatives to that. But I'm curious to see where this lands on the calendar for like next year, because this year they can kind of get away with this lull period because it's the first year and things are still coming out. We're still trying to figure out how competitive it's going to be, and we can't have a Worlds because it's COVID and all this other stuff. So I'm like morbidly curious to see if this sticks at the same time on the calendar next year, immediately following the League of Legends World Championship, because that would mean they either need to do a better job in the ramp up time and instead of having like lull period while Worlds is going on and then ramp up for First Strike / a World Championship, or whether they'll change it going forward. Again, just something to keep an eye on before we start talking about First Strike.
We will, and we will have a lot more First Strike content leading up to the main event, as each region will crown its champion leading up to the December 3rd to 6th events, which will be an open tournament format. Of course, hundreds of teams around the world will be able to compete and qualify at different stages in the First Strike tournament. And like I said, we're going to be talking about it at length on future episodes of the ESPN Esports Valorant Show.